Let's go live to the member for Parramatta, Andrew Charlton, who joins us. Andrew, why is the government making this call now? Why is it important?
Well, Kieran, the Australian superannuation system is the envy of the world. It's one of those things about Australia that makes you proud to be an Australian, but it's not perfect. And one of the problems with our system is that women retire with about 25% less superannuation than men. So today's announcement is a great step towards closing that gap. And it means that nearly 180,000 families in Australia who every year access this scheme will now get superannuation on top of their paid parental leave payment. And that will help over time to begin to close that gap between women and men in the Australian superannuation system.
James Patterson, the Liberal frontbencher, today made the point that this isn't a full wage replacement program. This is the PPL isn't meant to be a complete replacement of someone's lost wages in that period of early motherhood or fatherhood, given it's across both mothers and fathers. But the point he made was we don't normally pay super on other welfare payments. Does that stack up?
Well, I'm not sure that I would characterise this as a welfare payment. This is a payment for people who are out of the workforce, men and women, looking after newborns. And the problem we're trying to solve is a problem that overwhelmingly, it tends to be women who are taking that paid parental leave and taking time out of the workforce. Obviously, that needs to change. But in particular, I need to make sure that whoever is taking that time out of the workforce, it doesn't come at the cost of their retirement security. And that's why today's announcement is so important. We're providing additional retirement security for the people who make the important decision to spend time with their kids in those early months and years. That's the problem we're trying to solve. I'm not if James Patterson has an alternative solution to that. Obviously, the government is all ears, but we think this is an important step forward to make our superannuation system fairer and to address a real problem that we have within that system.
On the sluggish economic growth numbers out yesterday, I had Warren Hogan from Judo Bank on the program a bit earlier. He says the numbers suggest Australia has already achieved a soft landing. What's your read on that?
Well, I think Warren is right to the extent that if we were looking at the Australian economy a year ago, we had a mountain to climb. We had rapidly rising interest rates, we had very high inflation, and there were lots of question marks about how the Australian economy would come through that next year. And if we fast forward to now, what we have is inflation halved from where it was when the government inherited it. We still have near record low unemployment. We have a budget surplus and strong wages growth. So that is a pretty good set of economic conditions, which is testament to the fact that the government's economic plan is working. We have had slower economic growth, as many countries around the world have had slowing economic growth. Britain and Japan both fell into recession. So the fact that Australia is able to maintain positive growth and able to weather those international factors is a testament to the government's economic plan and proof that it is working.
You are an economist. The coalition is saying the economics stack up when it comes to nuclear energy. Why not simply just lift the ban on nuclear and let the market decide if there is scope for it?
Well, Kieran, the market is deciding right around the world. We saw recently the small nuclear reactor in Idaho was cancelled because of rising costs. That was a market decision to say no to nuclear. Let's remember, this small nuclear reactor in Idaho is the one that the Liberal opposition called the future of clean energy. It's now been cancelled, it's been scrapped. The truth is that the market has made its decision about nuclear energy. It knows that nuclear energy is by far the most costly type of new energy that we could add into the grid. And that's why it's not part of the government's plan. You know, I do feel for Peter Dutton on this, Kieran. You know, lots of the sensible solutions in the climate and energy debate are off the table for the Liberals. The Nats won't let them do sensible things in renewables. Many of the
But a lot of other
teal
nations
seats
are
will be
pursuing
continue
nuclear
to-
right now, aren't they? A lot of other members of the G20 are. I think we're only one of a couple that don't have nuclear as an option.
But here's the big difference, Kieran. They're not starting from a standing start. They started 10 years ago, 20 years ago, in most cases 30 and 40 years ago. So they put in that capacity, and now that capacity is contributing to their grid. From a standing start in Australia, it would take us a decade, if not 2 decades. That's time that we don't have, and it would be enormously expensive. That's the difference between Australia and countries like France and others who have nuclear capacity in their grid. Right now, nuclear is much more expensive than the options that are available today that weren't available back then. That's wind and solar and other renewable power, which is cost effective and can be made to be reliable. And that's the option that the government is pursuing.
Member for Parramatta, Andrew Charlton, appreciate it. As always, talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kieran.